Hey, welcome everyone. I believe we're just going to be using our system down here.
We have audio.
Commissioner French, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
You have audio. There's captions showing up. Yeah, we'll work on it.
We need to check out the other things. Mr. French, can you hear us now?
I can, thank you.
Okay, there we go. We're having a little technical difficulty, but I think we've at least can make it work for the time being.
I'm fine. Can you hear me? Hello? I can hear you fine.
Okay, very good. We can hear you now too. Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, we'll make this work for now. So welcome everyone to our October 31st, 2023 meeting, our regular legislative board meeting. Let the record reflect that we have all 5 commissioners are here. Commissioner French is on Zoom. And we will go ahead and start with our pledge. Started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you. So I do also want to reflect that we did receive written comments for just one written comment for item 4B on today's agenda, which has been put into our record. And then we have one for the for our public hearing item 5A that has been received written as well. So with that then, this is an open public forum time. So this is for anything that is not, anyone who would like to speak on anything that is not on our agenda today. So this is a time for open public forum on any item that is not on our agenda. So I'm not seeing anyone online or anyone in the audience. Second call for anyone wishing to testify at our open public forum. Seeing no one. Third and final call for anyone wishing to testify in our open public forum. Again, I'm not seeing anyone online or anyone in the audience, so I will close the open public forum. And then we have a proclamation that we would like to make, as well as 3B is actually, though, that Governor Inslee has appointed Kat Nichols to the Washington State Veterans Affairs Advisory Committee. And so I do want to recognize that because we'll be having you come down with a green light proclamation as well. And just want to say thank you for all you do for the veterans here in Spokane County. I mean, and across the state and across the nation. You've been on, your state committees, national committees. I mean, you truly are a true service to our veterans here. So, I mean, I just want to say it means so much. You've headed up our veteran services and worked with the state as well. So thank you for all you do and congratulations on that appointment. So now I'll look to my fellow commissioners.
Madam Chair, I would like to read this proclamation in the form of a motion. This proclamation is in the matter of proclaiming and supporting Operation Green Light for veterans. Whereas the residents of Spokane County have great respect, admiration, and the utmost gratitude for all the men and women who have selflessly served our country and this community in the armed forces. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and way of life by our citizens. And whereas Spokane County seeks to honor these individuals who have paid the high price of freedom by placing their lives in harm's way for the good of all. And whereas veterans continue to serve our communities in the American Legion, veterans of foreign wars, religious groups, civil service, and by functioning as county veteran service officers in 29 states to help fellow former service members access more than $52 billion in federal health, disability, and compensation benefits each year. And whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and whereas an estimated 20% increase of service members will transition to civilian life in the near future, and whereas studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life. Whereas active military service members transitioning from military service are at high risk for suicide during the first year after military service. And whereas the National Association of Counties encourages all counties, parishes, and boroughs to recognize Operation Green Light for veterans. And whereas Spokane County appreciates the sacrifice of our United States military personnel and believes specific recognition should be granted. Now be it resolved, with a designation as a Green Light for Veterans County, Spokane County hereby declares from November 6th through Veterans Day, November 12th, 2023, a time to salute and honor the service and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform transitioning from active service. Therefore, be it further resolved that the observance of Operation Green Light, Spokane County encourages its citizens in patriotic tradition to recognize the importance of honoring all those who have made immeasurable sacrifices to preserve freedom by displaying a green light in a window in their place of business or residence. Now, therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Spokane County, on behalf of the citizens of Spokane County, do hereby proclaim and will show support for veterans by lighting buildings green from November 6th to November 12th, 2023, by shining a green light. County governments and our residents will let veterans know that they are seen, appreciated, and supported. Operation Green Light for Veterans, signed, dated the 31st day of October, 2023, the Board of County Commissioners.
Do I have a second? Commissioner French.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion as second for the proclamation for Operation Green Light. Any discussion?
I'll jump in.
Yes, Madam
Commissioner French, go ahead.
Commissioner French.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner Kearns. As a Marine Corps veteran, one of the things I love about Spokane is that as a community, we value the men and women that have served in the uniform. And as Commissioner Kearns indicated, have displayed a willingness to put their own personal safety and their life on the line to defend this country. And of course, when I served, it was in a time when wearing the uniform meant that you put yourself at risk. And it was a time where the military was not respected. And it's so gratifying that in the city and the county of Spokane, we value our military men and women that serve in serve this country and wear the uniform. And also, I want to say to the family members, because it's not just those that are wearing the uniform, but it's the family that supports them. Thank you. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for keeping the lights on. And thank you for all your support that you give our men and women that are wearing the uniform. You likewise serve this country in your service and care for the loved ones that are wearing the uniform. So I just wanted to say thank you to the community for your love and compassion for those that have worn the uniform and continue to wear the uniform in defense of our freedom and rights for this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kearns.
You know, this is one of those ones that quite frankly I'm honored to be able to read this proclamation and honored to vote yes for it. And I think just kind of the final line in the proclamation, just making sure that every veteran here knows that you are seen, you are appreciated, and you are supported. None of what we do here would be possible if it wasn't for our men and women in uniform and the veterans that have just made this country so great. So I want to thank you to our men and women in uniform. Thank you to all our veterans. Thank you to their family members. And this is quite a sight too. For those of you who haven't seen what we did last night, between the 6th and the 12th, be sure to drive by the courthouse and you're in for a sight. It's lit up green. It really is amazing. So glad to be able to be a small part of this. And yeah, I will be voting yes.
Just real briefly wanted to thank Kat for bringing this forward and for working with our building or facilities folks on this display. Really looking forward to see it. I couldn't have put it better myself. Excited to come together as a county to recognize the dedication and service of these individuals. So thank you.
I was just going to also thank Kat, and I know we're one of the cities that made it on the national, or counties that made it on the National Association of Counties for our display last year. So hopefully we'll be even bigger and better this year with more people putting on the green light for veterans. And it's great that we get to celebrate this week, but we really should be celebrating veterans all year long. And my husband's birthday is this Friday, which is November 10th, the day before Veterans Day, but it is the Marine Corps birthday, which he always reminds me. His father was a Marine. And so thank you to everyone who has served and continues to serve our country.
Yeah, and I just again say thank you to all that you've done. My father was twice served. He got to serve at the end of World War II, and then in the Army Air Corps, and then in the Marines, as he didn't serve quite 1 year, so he got to get redrafted during the Korean War. So it is something that, you know, I think everybody knows how special Veterans Day is for all the vets that are out there. And I guess I should say my brother's a Navy veteran, so like I think we crossed most of them off in my family. But I just want to say, so any veterans that are out there in the audience today, could you please stand? Look at that. Thank you. So with that, I will take the vote so we can give you the proclamation. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Very good.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. If you would like to come up so we can, I think you want to say something. And you guys can all come up. I'll come up because then we're going to take a picture with you. So yes, so thank you. Kat, I'll let you speak. And again, congratulations on your appointment,
You too,
Kat.
Chris, don't hide. So I'm humbled and honored that we have such a veteran supportive county and leadership. As you guys all know, I served in the State Department of Veterans Affairs for a long time, and I spent a big portion of my career explaining to people why veterans are special, why they deserve a program or a proclamation or that kind of thing. And it's a rare breed that raises their right hand and commits their lives to others. And I think it's very special, and I'm very humbled and grateful to work with leaders that think so too. So thank you so much. I also want to say thank you to Spokane County for being such a veteran-friendly employer, and that's what our showcase is here today. We were going to have our Veterans Advisory Board join us, but we've got one deployed to Turkey right now and one out of state, and so they weren't able to make it. So we have behind me veterans who work right here at Spokane County that are doing a phenomenal job. And just thanks to Spokane County for supporting them, not just, on Veterans Day, but year round, as you said, Commissioner Waldron. So thank you. Want to take a picture?
Thank you. Yes, we'll come up and we'll take a picture with everyone. No action. Okay, so welcome back after our photo. Commissioner French will try to Photoshop you in. So, okay, with that then, I did give the acknowledgement of the appointment to Kat Nichols prior to the proclamation. So then that takes us to item number 4 on today's agenda.
Madam Chair, move to approve items 4A through 4L.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for items 4A through 4L. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That will then take us to item number 5A, which is a public hearing item. We did receive one written comment. It looks like Monty is going to be speaking to it. So this is public hearing item 5A to consider vacation of Aquadero Court, County Engineers Road File number 2595 for the Spokane Public Works Department.
Waiting for my exciting slideshow. The county engineer, Matt Zarakor, is out this week, so you get me instead. So you can move the next slide, please, Ron. So this is Aquadero Court is how I'm pronouncing it, in the plat of Monte del Rey out east, north of Trent. This particular cul-de-sac has never been built. There's no road, it's never been established, and actually the properties also were never built upon. They would like to, it's very steep terrain, so they would like to basically rework this to make it more buildable. I will read in part of the county engineer's report. So under current use, the right-of-way is for a small cul-de-sac that was never built or established. Future public need, the right-of-way is excavated from a steep hillside and provide challenging access to the adjacent lots it was intended to serve. The cul-de-sac is surrounded by private property as platted and has no public benefit. It is the recommendation of our office that this section of right-of-way should be vacated as requested by the petitioner. You have any questions?
Okay, Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions. So this is a public hearing item. So I will open up for public testimony on item number 5A. And Mr. Costello, I see you. So Mr. Costello is here, but we have his written testimony as well, who's in support. So second call for anyone wishing to testify on item 5A. Third and final call for anyone wishing to testify on item number 5A. Seeing no one online and no one else in the audience, I will close the public testimony and I'll look to my fellow commissioners.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the county engineer's recommendation in the consideration of vacation of Aquadero Court, County Engineers Road File number 2595 for the Spokane County Public Works Department.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for item number 5A. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 I,
Motion passes unanimously. There was no notice. Today was just item 3 was the proclamation. That's okay. Thank you. I was just going to say we're about to be done, although we've got more continuation from this morning. But yes, so I had that issue last week where I had the wrong agenda, so it's all good, Bonnie. It's Halloween. So with that, then, so 5A passes unanimously, and then that takes us to item number 6, which is to adjourn. Is there anything else to come before during this meeting, as we will then be continuing our 2 o'clock or our 9 o'clock meeting?
Nothing additional for this meeting.
Okay, very good. So then I will officially adjourn the 2 o'clock meeting, and then we will continue the 9 o'clock meeting, which has 3 more items on it, and I believe it's like 3 executive sessions.
That's correct.
So, okay. So with that, do we just want to start or, okay, we will just, because we didn't put a time. Thank you. This last time we had a time. So that is going to take us to item 4A from our 9 o'clock agenda meeting. Like, make sure I say all this right. So we have Mr. Burgess and I believe Jeff McMorris to talk on our legislative priorities.
So you're going to recognize most of this, but number 2 in yellow is we reworked it, the disaster relief fire response section. Chandra wrote it or helped with it. So if there's any questions, she is on to speak to it or answer any questions.
Oh,
So
Go ahead.
this looks very good. Thank you, Chandra, for helping. So the 2B, making the Department of Commerce's Emergency Rapid Response Fund pilot program permanent. Was that the fund that was almost depleted that it's referring to?
Correct. That's the fund. They had originally told us they were going to give us the 2.9 million, but then they backed it off to the 2.5 because the 2.9 would have cleaned them out.
Okay, thank you.
So are you guys good with this section as written? Thank you, Chandra. The next would be number 5, which you'll recall last week, it was just a kind of a grammatical switch. Instead of saying don't prohibit, it was saying continue to allow. So really no change other than grammar. Number 6, what you see there. Ian, can you take that? Well, that was just a word change that Commissioner French and Commissioner Jordan agreed to last week. On number 6, Commissioner Jordan sent an email a little bit ago with some other ideas, so that's coming around for discussion and thoughts. Also, Commissioner French, I emailed this to you right before the meeting.
You want me to speak to that?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up because I did reach out to GSI, as I said I would, and it's all here in the email, but my understanding is they're looking at, and GSI indicated they were going to send me their language. I don't think they have it yet, so I don't have the final language, but it looks like what was being discussed is some language around making compliance under the Clean Building Act more flexible to allow for some innovative ideas to qualify as compliance. And they specifically mentioned carbon capture technologies, and we have some companies in the region that are working on that. So it was to try to say that we support expanding flexibility of compliance pathways to include innovative, cost-effective technologies that would still be consistent with climate pollution reduction goals. So that's the best I could do in the absence of specific language from GSI to align with theirs. And then I'll just say also that I did suggest adding into our section here that we do support expanding affordable, reliable, clean energy sources to help address climate change. And my thought with that, certainly open to others' feedback, is that it was consistent with GSI's most recent legislative language, which did talk about climate change. And I do think that if we are going to the state legislature asking for flexibility, asking for financial assistance from the Clean Buildings Act, I think it may be received more as more of a constructive request if we put some acknowledgement of the goals that they were attempting to achieve with that law. That's my story.
Any other
And
comments?
sorry for the late information. I was waiting for GSI to give me the language, so I figured I'd send it the best I could. So.
Are we going to make changes here, keep as is, something different?
Commissioner Waldrop and then Commissioner French.
So Commissioner Jordan, so some of these like carbon capture technologies that are being developed potentially could help. What you're saying is like a building owner be able to capture carbon emissions in it and reduce the emissions and maybe not have to make other more traditional investments like upgrading the windows or doing different things around energy systems in buildings, that type of thing. I'm sure you're an expert on carbon capture now.
I can tell you what was explained to me. I'm certainly not an expert, but my understanding of carbon, the emerging technology is it basically can capture some of the carbon and turn it into a brick, was the phrase that was used, rather than to be emitted into the air. But based on what I'm hearing, there might be a challenge with the Department of Ecology not currently considering those technologies to be compliance with the Green Buildings Act. And so there might be room for the legislature to go back and tweak the language to make it more flexible. And then it sounds like GSI's potential interest in such language would be to allow for some of the public entities like universities, et cetera, that have to comply with the green buildings law to use some technologies that are on the innovative end of things to potentially pave the way for private industry to adopt some of that once the need to comply expands to other entities.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair. I would actually I support what Commissioner Jordan is suggesting in terms of a language change. I mean, if in fact the goal is to reduce the amount of carbon emission, then supporting systems that will capture that is certainly consistent with the overall goal and stuff. So fundamentally, I support what he's saying. And should be incorporated in our language because it does require the state to adopt legislation to support that effort, and that then should be reflected at the State Building Code Council as they develop policies from a building code standpoint and stuff. So the specific language I don't have in front of me, but I'm certainly supportive of the concept and the goal that they're trying to articulate.
I was just gonna ask, can we get this email forwarded to Commissioner French, just so we know he's seeing what
He
we're
should
saying?
have it in his inbox.
Oh, okay. I support that final sentence, or a version of it that the Commissioner Jordan has there. I'm just thinking from a sentence structure standpoint, ending two sentences in a row with states climate pollution reduction goals. The very next one, consistent with climate pollution reduction goals. Is there a way to just restructure that? So I can see my English teachers telling me don't end the same don't end two sentences in a row with the exact.
I know.
I
had the same thought over lunch trying to put this together. So I'd be happy to work to clean it up a bit.
So it sounds like we're good going with the email version with a little bit of grammatical fixing for the grammarians among legislators. Okay.
Because there's
The
also
English majors.
a comma versus a period at the end of the first sentence.
What was that again? I'm sorry.
There's a comma versus a period at the end of the first sentence.
Oh, picky. We will fix that. Thank you. Okay, then number 7 in yellow, you will see the language Commissioner CUNY has brought up and has been discussed the last couple of weeks. I've not heard any oppositions. So are we good with that? Okay. Number 8, I just added in the headings of A and B. The actual language beyond the heading is consistent with last week. We did add in the new condo development language, which I'd forwarded to both Commissioner French and Jordan, as I had spoke to it last week. Is that looking good to everyone?
Yeah, I'm good with the language.
I'm good with it.
See another head nod, so that's 3. Going on? Okay.
I'm just thinking it's like, it's much harder for me to try to pay attention, read, and then try to pay attention to who's on screen. So it's all good. So just help me out here, people. Thank you. Commissioners.
Number 9 is all new language. It was referenced last week by Commissioner CUNY. She emailed me a version of this. I worked with Arian Schmidt at Broadlink to really just kind of tighten it up and make it a little bit shorter. But these are all points that have been echoed by Wasac, Broadlink, and like I said, Arian has helped with the wordsmithing here.
Commissioner French.
So we chose not to add the language that suggested that they deal with people that know what they're talking about. Is that what I'm reading here?
I am more than happy to add that language. I took it as tongue in cheek last week.
Okay. I guess my tongue is still in my cheek then.
I think that's best addressed with one of those supporting letters that we discussed last week.
Okay.
What is the last one, just for my information, the transparency and the rural opportunity fund?
I had the same question to the best of my understanding after the conversation. There are certain areas, rural areas of the state that are not currently qualified for BEAD. So this is asking in Broadlinkies, Wasackies to allow those areas also to compete. Does that somewhat nail it, Commissioner CUNY?
I think that's correct, Scott. No.
Scott disagrees.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I wish I had some more, had some more to offer, but I don't know. I think what Jeff is saying fits with what I understand it as well.
That was my takeaway from my conversation with Arian.
Because I think there was somehow in the mapping, there were areas that actually have a higher need that are not showing up on the mapping. And so it's trying to make sure that those areas, if they can show the need in kind of in alternative form, to be eligible. I think that's including a wording verification.
It was a much longer paragraph, which I also did not understand. It's just why I worked with Arian in reducing it down.
Okay, sounds good.
And then before we go to capital budgets, so based on the conversation that we had, with PFAS being such an issue across the state and across the nation, would we want to put something in at the state legislative level, Commissioner French, regarding this? You're muted.
Yes, a great point, Madam Chair, and I think absolutely. I think it's clearly rising in terms of level of awareness, and we need everybody to be able to weigh in both at the federal level and at the state level. So if we could develop language around that, I think that would be great.
Thank you.
This is around funding for cleanup or a different angle?
I would have you speak to Larry Crowder at the airport to maybe provide some language for us at the state level, as well as I believe at the federal level.
Okay, I'll reach out to the airport.
You okay with that, Commissioner French?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So anything else under the first section before we go to capital or transportation?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Commissioner French.
Yeah, on the version that was sent to me under the public building energy standards, the language that Commissioner Jordan was referencing to is not in the version that was sent to me. So
I attached the current agenda draft to I forwarded the email from him. So if you scroll down, you will see it in the body of the email.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Got it. Thank you.
So we're good on section 1 pending a PFAS statement. Perfect.
And clean up language.
Yes, clean up as we discussed number 6.
Might suggest reaching out to the city on that issue to see if they have considered any language as well.
Mhm.
So capital, there's no, the only thing is ordering, priority order. So we had talked last week about starting with the clean buildings. We split out the campus versus the regional health building. We put Shrek at the bottom because they have their own funding source. 2 and 3 is just kind of how they landed. Are you good with this section in its priority? We're not actually calling it a priority order, but when you have discussions, you could say that, or we could say it's our priority order.
So I think number 2, and Commissioner French, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This actually comes out of a separate fund. It's not actually out of the capital budget. Wasn't it out of general fund? So wouldn't we want to kind of identify this separately and not have it get confused amongst the capital budget requests?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. You're exactly right. It was out of the general fund, and it was a direct appropriation. It wasn't out of the capital budget. So it probably should be in a different section of our request and take it out of the capital budget request.
Would we move it up to the first section then? Would that just make the most sense?
That's what I'd advocate for.
So make it item number 11.
Yeah.
It'd be item 10 at this point. Broadband is 9, unless we put it somewhere.
PFAS is 10.
Okay. So are we good with PFAS 10 and the mobile home parks 11?
11. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll make that move. That leaves us with just the 3 capital requests. Are we good with that?
That's great.
Commissioners, I could offer something on the helicopter. You might remember I was waiting to talk with a colleague of mine that works in the law enforcement area. He had been traveling, so I'd heard from him after we talked this past week. To his knowledge, there has not ever been funding in the budget for a helicopter. There are some, I guess what I'd call them military surplus programs that you all have participated in the past and been successful in getting vehicles. So just wanted to provide that context. I told you I would reach out to find out if other jurisdictions had done this in the past or not.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that's really cool. We get to be the first. So.
And I would say that, in the past, there wasn't the pursuit bill that passed that would require us to have a need, further need for the helicopter.
So we'll leave it in as number 2. So then on to transportation. Just a couple small changes. Talking with.
Before we go on to that, I was just going to ask on the campus upgrades for the clean buildings. Do we want to, this is just a question, do we want to add anything that clarifies like upfront costs? Because I anticipate some of the response perhaps from certain legislators might be, well, what about the cost savings to some of these things? So do we want to make clear that there's an upfront expense that we need help with as a way to maybe make that land better? Just an idea.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll add that language into 1A under capital budgets. Anything else before we go transportation?
Yeah, and I think we'd want to make sure for both of those.
Kind of
two.
included in both.
Yes.
I could actually even probably include it in the heading number 1, so it apply to both. So under transportation, the Craig Road Phase 1, which is also number 1, talking with Commissioner French, he suggested we reduce it down to 20 million for, what was I doing that for?
Because the only thing we're funding, the only request we're asking for is the interchange, the work at the interchange. Not the expansion of Craig Road going up to Highway 2. So if you're just dealing with the interchange, the cost of that is dramatically less. And so that's why we reduced the cost. And we're continuing to work on that number. But for where we're at right now, that's not a bad number. But we'll continue to work to get it reduced down.
And that's when I submitted it to GSI. My memory is back.
Yeah.
So I will work with you then, Commissioner French, on which part of this to reduce out and leaving just the intersection part or the interchange.
Well, you've already taken it from 30-some million down to 20. And
I mean,
so,
the narrative part, not the.
oh, okay. Yeah, not a problem. Okay. And then just for information for my fellow commissioners, the request out of Airway Heights is for $10 million to go to the widening of Craig Road from US 2 down to 902. So they are pursuing that funding independently of what we're doing here.
So we'll work on those changes. I'll work with Commissioner French on that. Number 2 was just, I believe it was Commissioner Waldriff who suggests we bring in that might catch their eye. So we didn't say county. I did say county funded, but then our staff said it's a mix of funds. So I just took it to just currently funded instead of explaining different nuances there. So that's where that language came from.
Is it funded and actually being built as well, right, in this next year?
That is my understanding. I didn't ask that specific question. I can get the
Anyway.
timing. I'll get the timeline and just shoot you an email. Or there's somebody, yeah, Kyle, you'll know.
There he is. I just thought it would be good to say that, we're not just, it's not just like our plans are to, build it out in the next year, which might make it a more compelling ask.
Oh yeah, the contract's actually already been awarded. So they might even start on some of the signing work that they can do yet this year and then do the striping components next year. So it's in construction right now.
Perfect. I will add that. Currently under construction or starting construction. I'll work on that. And then that is it. And we have reordered the numbers a little bit. I moved the arterial preservation up from near the bottom to number 4. And I think that was the only reordering from last week. The ones on top are ones that are also in the SRTC regional list. The ones below the arterial preservation 5 through 8 at this point are not. So that's why I chose to put arterial preservation in that particular location. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
So do you want this to come back next week, or is this something we can just work on the changes and shoot around via email? Are you good with just kind of giving? Okay, so we'll work on this, get it out via email, and then unless something else changes, we'll get it on consent once these minor things have been changed out. Perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike, for joining us today. Okay, then that's going to take us to our next one. So Chris McKinney and George Dahl.
Hello. I'm Chris McKinney. I am the homeless programs manager, a new homeless programs manager for the Housing and Community Development Department. So nice to meet you guys finally, although I've heard a lot about you. I'm here to give you guys a little bit of information about the current state of the Consolidated Homeless Grant, as well as present some funding recommendations for some continued allocations there. So a little bit of background, you guys may remember in August, early August, you guys would have awarded or approved the awarding of $8.7 million coming from the Consolidated Homeless Grant from Department of Commerce to Spokane County. That was 5 yeses and 0 nos, and that's resolution number 23 TAC 0459. Those contractual agreements were approved between the county and our department, as well as the various service providers to provide those CHG funded homelessness services for the contract period 4/7/1 to 6/30, which is state fiscal year 24. That resolution was 23 TAC 0312. Those were 5 yeses and 0 nos there, just for a little bit of background on where this funding is coming from.
So I'm just going to double check
yes,
if you
of
go back
course.
to that slide. So it was for 7/1/23. Is it just for 1 year to 24 or
I'm sorry,
to 20?
yes. For 7/1/23 to 6/30/24.
Okay,
correct.
just to make sure, I just, since the above one was a 2-year period, I just want to make sure that was the 1 year period.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
and that's a great distinction there. Our award, of course, is 2 years, while these awards are single year awards, which we'll get into in a bit as well. The next slide will show the current awards as they were awarded back in that before August timeframe, as well as the funding recommendations that the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee are putting in front of the Board of County Commissioners. The distinction here is that the award that was given to the county, the $8.7 million, is separated into a couple different line items. Those would be CHG standard and what's called eviction prevention line item. The eviction prevention award is $5.1 million over those that 2-year period, and those have yet to be allocated. And so this amendment recommendation is to not only allocate the eviction prevention dollars to those grantees who had already submitted requests and approved by the advisory committee, and place those funds into action starting 7/1 of this year, which of course we're a bit behind on. Any questions on this slide in particular before we move on?
Commissioner Walter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we just waited to allocate these funds till later then?
Correct, yeah. So since these funds were different or supplemental funds on top of the normal CHG standard awards, they came across in a different way. So these were supplementally added into that original CHG standard award. So the Housing and Community Development Advisory Council needed to kind of subsequently approve those.
So only awardees of the CHG funds could then get the supplemental.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. These were previously approved awards and graded in the kind of the RFP process. No RFP was put out for these eviction prevention.
So then how did you make the determination about what percentage would go to which agencies?
These funds are part of the original awards, and so these would be up to their original award amounts. So a good example is Family Promise there. Their total request was $750,000. That's not changing. We're just allocating the $500,000 to eviction prevention, and their CHG standard would be that $250,000 amount. The YWCA is a different example in that they submitted 2 separate awards, or 2 separate requests, I should say. One for CHG standard and one for eviction prevention. We're just putting those awards together and approving them as one. SNAP's the last example there of being awarded less than their original amount, $419,000, but getting their actual eviction prevention request, which was $960,000 there. So they were just separate parts of the original awards that were not approved quite yet until we had a little bit more information.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then what would be helpful is to see the totals for each, just so we know what the totals are for each of those, because I know as I'm trying to figure out, as you're talking about the additional funding coming in, that it ties back to that for me. Sorry.
Absolutely.
That accountant person, but I think it's, because it's good for us to know how much additional money is coming in for eviction protection. So that way, as we're talking to community members, we know, some of those we're looking at it from the whole, not individually.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Can I go one more slide, please? So this would break it down into the current award or current recommendation. the $3.3 million subcontracting to 7 subrecipients. The 1.6 from CHG standard would have been from the original awards. The 1.7 from eviction prevention would be what's added into this this reallocation. And you can kind of see the breakdown there on the right of kind of our portfolio and how that's going. This hopefully speaks to that question, but I can have it a lot more broken down for you all as well. And we could back up a little bit if we could. Some additional language that we wanted to ensure was updated with these amendments is to change a couple of the performance expectations that we were outlining in our contracts with subgrantees. And so you can see a couple of these amendments in front of y'all. We would update the monitoring language to reflect our data analysis into the CMIS or HMIS system that that subgrantees are required to use for these funds. We would update the subrecipient expectations to furnish reports as requested. That's kind of based on that CMIS reporting as well. We would update the subrecipient requirement of the regional coordinated entry process utilization. A little bit of background on this: any subgrantees who are receiving eviction prevention awards shall use the coordinated entry process. And so we wanted to make sure that was illuminated in their contracts with us, as well as the consolidated homeless grant guidelines that they're supposed to read as well. And the last one there, the updated subrecipient requirement of CMIS utilization, which kind of piggybacks off of the previous amendment. Of course.
Commissioner Walter.
Sorry, it's lots of numbers. So the original 8.7 million that you had on the first slide, half of that, or a little over half, we already allocated in August.
Correct.
And then this is the additional about 3 million that we're allocating.
Absolutely. So 2.1 million was allocated. Thank you so much. It was allocated back in August from CHG standard. We would be effectively growing that number to a total of 3.3 million total, but we're adding the eviction prevention piece on top of this. So 1.6 million would be coming from CHG standard, and 1.7 would be new funds that have not yet been allocated, and those would be going towards eviction prevention projects specifically. It is a little nuanced with the CHG standard number because that's going down. So it seems like we're putting less funds into CHG standard, but we're just reallocating those into eviction prevention specifically, as those contracts had outlined in their requests.
So did all of these groups apply for eviction prevention or only some?
No, ma'am. Only those contracts that you're seeing with the green numbers beside them would have had eviction prevention.
Okay. So they wanted to do strategies to try and keep people housed, whether that be paying a couple months rent or helping folks with utility bills or something so they could stay housed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so then I have a question on the last slide we had. So the coordinated entry, regional coordinated entry process, there's just been lots of discussion on that because sometimes I've heard varying things from nonprofits in the area. So could you speak to that just a little bit? Because I think a lot of us are, we're already seeing a lot of homeless dollars that are out there. And so I'm hoping these are going to people so they don't get evicted, which is the eviction prevention. So I guess I just want to know how that coordinated entry process works with that.
Absolutely. So there are a couple of different coordinated entry sites in the community. A couple of different examples were our family coordinated entry and singles coordinated entry. They would go to separate sites to receive essentially a couple hours of fact finding and getting to know the person to see what services they would be eligible for. That coordinated entry would then should then refer them to applicable services. So in these cases with eviction prevention, or specifically the homelessness prevention intervention, that level of coordinated entry has not been too fleshed out in our coordinated entry system. And so this project is kind of going alongside a couple of coordinated entry potential changes with the COC to kind of utilize different weighting criteria for homelessness prevention interventions. So the coordinated entry process as it stands now, there's a full SPDAT, if you guys have heard kind of how that goes, and they go into a lot of in-depth information for the participant, which is fantastic, but is not necessarily applicable to those who need eviction prevention or homelessness prevention support. And so we hope to develop something that allows them to utilize a less invasive tool that allows them to get weighted properly and get referred to the appropriate services. Coordinated entry process also is allowed to, or I shouldn't say allowed, but pools folks into different categories. And so eviction prevention, as an example, would not be weighted against those who are up for rapid rehousing support. They would be weighted differently and they would have different levels of needs. Similarly, youth would be weighted differently than someone who is experiencing homelessness as an adult. So those are kind of different arenas of coordinated entry. And there is a lot of discussion about that right now. And the requirement that comes from the Department of Commerce is that coordinated entry itself is a requirement and that we should utilize the system that this COC creates, but it does not define what exactly coordinated entry looks like within that COC. So there's some flexibility for the COC to develop tools that work for us as a community.
And so who are the two groups that are doing the coordinated entry at this point in time? Is Catholic Charities one of them?
Correct. Catholic Charities for families, SNAP would be for singles, and Volunteers of America would be for youth.
Okay, and they are provided funding to do those services as well?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Not from these award types.
Not from these funds, but they have additional funding to, there's a RFP that was put out that they received the funding to be those coordinated entry sites.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Waldron.
And to your point, Madam Chair, I think if I'm understanding this correctly, so instead, we already have this regional coordinated entry process. So those three agencies already receive dollars when somebody is in danger or is homeless, in danger of becoming homeless, or they are homeless, however that's defined. They get seen by folks at either Catholic Charities or VOA or SNAP. But part of the issue has been, unless you are HUD qualified homeless, you get very low, you get I don't know if it's high or low score, but you don't get a very good score to get access to housing. But here, if you haven't yet been evicted, there's a chance with these funds that you could go there and there'd be a source of funding or support for you to stay housed. Is that the idea? So are all those agencies set up then to be able to identify folks when they come in and ask those right questions to make sure they can get ahead of eviction?
I can't speak to the exact.
But it's kind of like a diversion. It is like using diversion as a strategy.
Yeah. So the diversion should be really the first conversation that those
How do we prevent you from having to go to a shelter or some sort of temporary housing situation?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Those are the initial conversations, and the referral to grant or to services that are receiving these funds should come from that conversation as well. So if you're looking at, for instance, SNAP receiving their portion of the award, if someone went into a coordinated entry site and had that evaluation, they would be referred to SNAP for for homelessness prevention services specifically, and they wouldn't be weighted or pooled against folks who are waiting for rapid rehousing services.
Although in this scenario, if you did reach out to Family Promise, if you were a family that was experiencing some stability issues, they would have to say, call Catholic Charities, and then Catholic Charities would have to refer that family back to Family Promise?
Yes and no. So the CMIS system that they utilize, they're able to put in data and create a referral for them. And so how those sites that utilize these awards is they can pull from the coordinated entry system for those folks who have been evaluated. So they do enter onto a list, and that list goes into the system itself, and they can pull from there. So it would be really the relationship between the direct service provider and the coordinated entry site to say, hey, we've got an opening for 4 folks. Could you please send these names over? And those would be homelessness prevention folks or rapid rehousing folks or whatever specific type of service.
Okay, so a family could still go call up Family Promise and be served through Family Promise, or they can be referred through the regional coordinated entry.
They could. The caveat there is that they would still need to be entered into the coordinated entry system.
Okay.
So they would If it was a single, they would need to go through SNAP.
Just to
make
track,
sure.
to be able to track the data and see what the ultimate outcome is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next slide, please. Does anyone have any questions about the state fiscal year 2024 recommendations? Next slide, please. I just wanted to give an outline of what 25 would look like as well. We're kind of going through RFP development right now as well, and looking at a needs analysis and seeing what this portfolio should look like in state fiscal year 25. There's also a little bit of room for improvement in the split between CHG standard awards and eviction prevention awards, which we'll be working with Commerce to see if we can get those a little bit more akin to this year's awarding levels. Those needs analysis that we've been thinking about at this point are really that data informed service delivery. So CMIS utilization will be a huge priority for us in 2024. Program change requests to make sure that those awards is not a stark fall off between CHG standard 2024 and CHG standard 2025. And then, of course, there's a 10% buy and force service delivery requirement. So ensuring that we're meeting Commerce requirements to designate funds that are going towards buy and force agencies. And that's a requirement from Commerce as well. And if anyone did have any questions on those specific funding sources, these would be the difference between CHG standard and eviction prevention. We really don't have to take too much time on this, aside from noting that eviction prevention is almost a subset of CHG standard. So you'll notice that homelessness prevention is an allowable intervention in CHG standard, but all of the allowable interventions from CHG standard are not allowable from eviction prevention. We hope to move this for consent next week. Any questions?
So consent for next week is just to do the additional 3 contracts.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. To redo the original 3 contracts funding wise, but also to add the amendments, contract amendment language that you saw in sections 9 and I believe 11.
Okay. Yes. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Didn't you do such a good job?
You did a great job. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Yes.
One thing I did want to add to what Chris had mentioned is eviction prevention is not rental assistance. That's really important for you all to understand, as well as our community, that this is not a continuation of the rental assistance programming that existed during COVID. So we'll have limitations on what folks are able to access. We want to make sure that folks are maintaining housing stability and that we're not perpetuating a less desirable housing situation for folks. So I just wanted to add that to what Chris has already shared.
Commissioner Walters.
Although on the slide, it did say support with rent, right? That's a strategy, but what you're saying is it's not the same COVID rental assistance program.
Absolutely. So assistance with rent would be perhaps they've fallen a month or 2 behind. So we'll do up to 3 months of rental arrears and cover maybe some late fees, but we won't give them months of rental assistance. So
it's not ongoing.
Correct.
It's a one-time strategy.
To stabilize. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, so Mr. Anderson. I believe.
We have 3.
Oh. So this is the discussion on the legislative meetings rules of conduct.
Indeed. And this one, I did send out an email and I have some hard copies.
No, very good, since a couple of us did not bring our computers.
Indeed.
Thank you.
And so based on the discussion last week, started with a draft that made some slight modifications to the rules of conduct for the board's meetings. However, I don't believe substantially changed the intent or the underlying goal or purpose of those rules. Mostly just reworded some of them, kind of changed some of the tone and tenor to more accurately reflect and hopefully more effectively implement the board's intent. Okay.
So Mr. Anderson, under A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, bullet point 7. So I don't know how else to identify it.
Yes.
Matters concerning the professional duties and performance of individual officials or employees shall be directed to the relevant department head, elected official, or human resources department. I guess I'm, trying to figure out how, if somebody has a concern, they want to bring it to the Board of County Commissioners. How they do that.
On this topic.
Yeah, I mean, they need to do it in a professional manner. I mean, in the past, it's been able to be in a professional manner, in a manner that doesn't disparage an employee or identify an employee. So I don't know that we're trying to stop people from speaking to issues that they have as a citizen
To Commissioner CUNY's point there, earlier it says that where was it? Which one was it? I'm sorry. Where it said all statements are directed to the chair, but in this one, it says matters concerning duties individuals should be directed to the relevant department head. So kind of, if everything's directed towards the chair, but this one says if you've got a complaint about somebody, you direct it towards them.
Right, they're not allowing it to come before us.
So should that be more clearly stated? This is not for the purpose of essentially a grievance towards an employee. Is that what this is trying to say?
Well, so you can see what that is replacing, the language that is replacing. And so the intent is to modify that language to retain the intent there without expressly prohibiting it, because as you can see, the language was changed to should, not shall. Right. And the intent behind there is that, generally speaking, with the exception of probably some of the higher level directors and management, generally speaking, I would say the more effective forum for dealing with an issue that does in fact directly involve a single individual employee is going to be at the level of that employee's supervisor. As opposed to the board. Generally speaking, the board does not get into employee matters on an individual employee level. Again, kind of with the exception of higher level management. That does not limit or remove the ability to address the issue. However, if the issue is, road crew knocked over my mailbox, well, the more effective forum for that complaint might not be the board, might be the supervisor or the risk manager or somebody.
No, but we are the conduit for citizens to talk to us directly, since we are directly elected by them as constituents. And so I actually do get those comments that the road wasn't graded properly and that
Sure.
It comes to us. So I don't want us to stop that, because we all feel very passionate about citizens should be able to come and talk to us about any issue. Now, coming in, what I think we didn't want to have happen is coming in and disparaging an employee publicly. So I'm just trying to figure out how to, this to me, this reads that a citizen can't come and complain to me individually about somebody.
So these are the rules of conduct for the board's public meetings. So certainly a member of the public can individually bring to an individual commissioner whatever they would like to. This does not in any way address anything outside of a public meeting. And so based on the conversation last week, my takeaway was that we wanted to do some rewording of some of these rules. This one replaced the rule that no person shall initiate a charge or complaint against an individual county employee. So I did reword that into this manner. Certainly, if the board wants to remove that entire discretion to do so.
Okay, I think I need to think about that a little bit further.
Certainly.
Commissioner Jordan and then Commissioner French.
I appreciate the attempt to kind of try, put an idea out here. I'm just thinking out loud that should be directed to the relevant department is in the eye of the beholder, right? Maybe it could say the relevant department as determined by the chair. I don't know if that puts too much pressure on the chair to kind of make that call. Might make it more implementable. I was also thinking about maybe just putting no person shall orally initiate personal attacks against a individual county employee at a public meeting. That might take care of it, because you could still arguably complain about official duties, right? Like this person drove by and knocked over my mailbox, but you couldn't call them names, right? Or make up things about them in a public hearing, because that would be a personal attack, which would be allowed, I think, legally as a rule.
So, sorry, I think I didn't follow the context of that last piece. I do think maybe a little bit of an additional perspective on this one. I can tell you that, none of these rewrites that I put in here, came out of a vacuum. This was based on a review of a significant number of other counties and other cities and the rules they've implemented, and then additional legal research that was done by myself and others in my office. As far as the matters employment matters and matters concerning employee performance, I can tell you that in other jurisdictions, the underlying point and purpose of this type of, and I will say, I guess this is more of a guideline, because I didn't, and I intentionally put should instead of shall in there, right? And that does not, that is not prohibited on its face, but is simply to direct somebody with an individual complaint to a forum that will give them, kind of more immediate and more direct responsiveness to that issue. If they should bring up an issue that's not, maybe not really ripe or ready or at the level that the board is the appropriate place for it to be dealt with. And in other jurisdictions, how I have seen this utilized is that if that type of issue is brought up in a public forum at a full board meeting, generally speaking, that board or body will direct that individual to staff, generally there to then assist that person to find the correct department, the correct county official or employee who can answer their question or address their concern. And Madam Chair, I see Commissioner French.
Sorry, Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Anderson, two observations. The last bullet point before speaking time limits, it says the chair, vice chair, or their designee. And so I'm just curious, who would be a designee for the chair or vice chair that would maintain order and decorum in a meeting? Are you suggesting that that's Billy Bob, or is that the sheriff, or I'm not sure who you're suggesting would be the appointee for the chair.
I guess
could you help me out with that one a little bit? And then
certainly,
I've got another observation.
Certainly, and I'm not suggesting anybody in particular. However, the board does now have 5 members, and so a quorum can be reached without either the chair or vice chair. And so that leaves in the possibility of what I imagine would be a very rare, if ever, occurrence. However, if that situation should arise, there likely would need to be somebody designated to take up those responsibilities.
Okay, so it's actually another member of the board. It's not somebody that's outside of the board then. Okay,
No,
and
yes.
then the other question is, typically rules without consequences just become guidelines. And nowhere here do we have a consequence outlined for bad behavior. For instance, I think the city council, I could be wrong here, but I think the city council actually has a right to not allow you to speak for a certain period of time, or maybe you can be censured for a period of time or expelled for the meeting, or there are a variety of different ways, even with Robert's rules, that provide consequences. But I don't know that it doesn't appear that we have any consequences to violating these rules. So what would be the motivation for somebody to adhere to these if there's no consequence for not adhering to it?
So in the rules as I've drafted them and as the board has had them previously, as we've not had that in, the prior version did not delineate what the procedure is for violations of the rules. As you mentioned, there are the city and many other jurisdictions that do specify procedure for violations of rules of conduct at meetings. That is certainly something we can explore. These rules more or less leave it up to the discretion of the chair, vice chair, designee who is charged with preserving the order and decorum. And so it can cut both ways. Certainly, if that procedure is explicitly laid out, then you are, locked into that. And certainly, violations of the rules, they range. There could be, a very minor violation of the rules that you would not necessarily want to follow a very set procedure on. You would maybe want to have the flexibility to address it in a slightly different way. At the same time, certainly laying out a procedure for a violation of a rules of conduct would, put everybody on notice and give a very kind of set procedure to follow if in fact a violation occurs, and if there's further violations, kind of gives an escalation of potential consequences for violating public meeting rules of procedure. So certainly something that we can explore that, as you mentioned, other jurisdictions do, not required, again, at the board's preference.
Well, I guess I've been in hearings where you've had a disruptive person in the audience that might not be at the podium, but is clearly in the audience, creating a disruption. So the chair had the ability to have that person removed from the gallery. Are you comfortable that with these rules here, the way they're structured, if the chair had to deal with that kind of disruption, that the chair would have the authority to be able to say that person needed to be expelled from the gallery, or could have security remove somebody? I'm just trying to figure out, how do we maintain the decorum of a hearing if in fact somebody wanted to be disruptive enough to be able to interrupt or make the hearing impossible?
And in that situation that you just described, Commissioner French, statutorily, the board and the chair does have the discretion and ability to have an individual who is causing an actual disruption of county business removed, and or to close that meeting to the public if it becomes necessary to do so. So that is ingrained in statute. So whether we put it in the rules or not, that authority does exist.
Okay, thank you.
We may just want to reference that statute.
Yeah, I can certainly add that.
Yeah, just. Just to tag on to that, if there's someone disrupting and we don't have anyone to remove them, then the chair would have the opportunity to close the meeting and have us be removed.
Correct. And then generally the procedure that is followed as far as case law and statutorily is that if the meeting cannot be reconvened with the public without further disruption, the preference, of course, is to, if you close a meeting, to then reconvene and allow the public back in. But if that is not possible because of the disruption or because of an ongoing disruption, there are, under correct circumstances, options to reconvene that meeting outside of direct public, though it would still be a public meeting as far as being recorded and possibly open to the public online or in some alternative manner. But yes, in the event of a disruption that cannot be managed else in another manner, those options are available.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Waldron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So these are the rules that what we're looking at are the rules of conduct for anyone who comes before the commissioners, whether it be for open forum or on an agenda item.
That's correct.
Okay. But then we have a separate, do we have some other rules around specific to agenda items? Because I noticed you made the change around, confining remarks to matters related to or affecting Spokane County government. But don't we ask folks to speak to the issue if there's a hearing, that's the actual hearing item agenda?
Yes.
Agenda item.
Correct. So this is tailored for both, and a public hearing that has been noticed and opened as a public hearing, that would more or less automatically, that would limit the scope of what it can be addressed at that hearing. So in any given week, the board has, a hearing such as this week on closing a road, vacating a road, et cetera. On those hearings, that is the scope of that hearing, is what was published, noticed. When you get to that hearing, that scope is defined, as opposed to the board's public forum, which is open to effectively any issue relevant to county government.
So you don't think it's necessary to have, I mean, the city has very detailed rules. I think I've been involved in at least two times when I was at the city several times of updating. I think they've updated it like 3 or 4 times since. But you're saying your understanding of it is that you don't need to have separate public forum and other rules for speaking to agenda items.
So I don't believe we do. Our public forum, the scope of our public forum is defined in code. It's
Oh, and
it's
that's not
one.
this. This is the rules of conduct.
Correct.
That's
So
what I
these-
was getting
Yeah,
at.
okay,
I was
yeah,
saying that the
apologies.
code is different than
Right.
the rules of conduct.
Yes. So as far as our public forum, the scope of the public forum is defined under its section 101030 of the code. And that basically establishes that during the public forum, somebody can speak to anything, affecting, relating to county government. And my own words, not directly from the code, and then in a different public hearing, the scope of that hearing would be set by the notice of the hearing, stating that this hearing is to address X subject. And then, these are the rules that would kind of direct and control the conduct and to some degree content of all of those meetings and of addressing the board under any circumstance.
So do we need to go and look at I know you printed that off for us last time. Is the code consistent then if we made some changes to the rules?
Mostly, and some of the changes that I did make in this document were towards making these somewhat more consistent. The one change I will say that is in here that would be inconsistent with what is in 101030 is it's relatively minor, but the very, very first red line on the first page regarding the number of copies of submitting letters or documents, which was simply increased, obviously due to the increase in the size of the board. So we need more copies if somebody's going to provide something. That would be inconsistent if we changed it here to 7. The code does say 5 as well. So, but something that we could likely kind of clean up at another time when we're addressing code changes. If the board didn't want to address that section of code at this point.
So just to clarify, this is a resolution,
At this point, this is.
but if we were going to
Yes,
change
yes,
it, it
this
would be
would
by
be-
resolution.
That's correct. The rules of conduct were set by resolution and would appropriately be amended or modified by subsequent resolution.
This is just my personal opinion. No one has to pay any attention to it. But I would, if we're going to change the rules of conduct, personally, I'd also like to change or clarify the language in the code around extending the public hearing if it goes beyond 15 minutes, because it relates to the conduct of the meeting. So I'd like to do it all at once, which would make sense then to update the numbers.
Yes.
But that's just my opinion.
And that change would appropriately be done in the code, as it would kind of change the scope of the public forum.
And can that be done at the discretion of the chair? I mean, if kind of like, I just think of the special meeting that we did, hearing we did on the measure where we kind of came up with we kind of came up with the timeframe, as it presented itself. Just because, again, it's really the only time we've had something like that is very issue specific. It hasn't happened since I've been commissioner, but I know during the Hearst decision, it happened then. So I mean, I think again, if rather than changing code to allow for it on a meeting basis, would we just be able to then say, this is an issue that we know is going to draw a lot of public comment, but it'd probably be on the agenda. I mean, like the Hearst decision was on the agenda, not open public comment. I mean, we really just haven't had that many open public comments that have extended.
And that would kind of be the issue is if it's a specific issue that the board is going to hold a very specific public hearing for that particular matter, then it would be to your point, like we did the recent Measure 1 hearing where we set the parameters of that specific public hearing for that specific issue. As opposed to if for some reason on a given week, there are just a large number of people who wish to address the board at the open forum, more than the 15 minutes would allot for. And then the board wished to then extend that public forum to add additional time after the rest of the board's business was finished for the day. That would likely be something we would want to do in the code, and you could put it in there in a way that would basically give the board the option to do it if the need arose or if the board felt there was time or that was feasible.
I think we had one instance, if I'm remembering right, this year, I think where we had some scraps people testifying, and then there was a gentleman testifying about property taxes, I believe. He sent us an email. I think at least I got it, kind of complaining about the limitations of the public forum. And I think we kind of made a decision that they would be reduced to 2 minutes. Is that ringing a bell? Just
Yeah,
so-
that was a day where
Yeah.
I was filling in
I
as
said
chair.
we.
So I made the decision. So
I didn't wanna blame
everybody got
anybody.
to come up and testify. I think
Yeah.
we had 8 people that signed up. So I just thought, well, instead of, I think we all kind of agreed what was
Yeah.
like, okay, instead of telling 3 people you don't get to testify, we said, okay, we'll fudge it to 16 minutes as opposed to 15 and just give everyone 2 minutes. And so, but I think that's only happened the one time. I don't think there's been another instance where we've had more than 5 people actually show up and say they want to testify. But
And I think in his email, he had said, I prepared a 3-minute comment. So he was kind of upset that it was cut to 2 minutes. And so I just thought, that's a simple code change. Let's just make it clear that we can actually do that if it's needed under the code on a regular basis. So.
Yes, but I would say too, what typically happens, depending on the length of the meeting, people don't want to stay till the end to then reopen it back up. So so it just varies. I mean, it's interesting because I know when we went at the health district years ago to the 3-minute, 15 people, or 15 minutes, people didn't stay till the end of the meeting. Ours tend to not be that long, but you never know. So, it just, I don't know. It's hard to please everybody. So I'll just say that. So just go ahead and then I'll go to Scott.
Me? Okay, I just wanted to suggest maybe that we could write language that says that at the discretion of the chair, we could extend the length of time of the public meeting. If we had an extra person or 2 and we needed to add 3 or 6 minutes, I'm fine with that personally. So.
would you say would you say right at the beginning, just extend the 15 minutes to 25 minutes? Or are you saying add additional time once we've then adopted our consent agenda, then reopen the open public forum at that point?
I'd be good either way, but what I was suggesting is we usually have up to 15 minutes at the beginning, right? And if the chair wanted to proceed with the consent agenda, that could happen. Or if the chair realized there was 2 or 3 other people, the chair could decide to extend the public forum in appropriate 3-minute increments, if that was deemed to be better for the folks here so that they could give us their comment and get on their way. So I'd be good with kind of flexible language.
I think I have to think about that. Just so not willing to make a decision today on it, but really willing to contemplate it. Commissioner Waldrop, Scott, are you okay? And then Commissioner French.
I was just going to say, I think the city has changed their open forum to 2 minutes. I think because they have so many people coming and they don't want to make them wait till the end of the meeting, but we can always look at, I don't want to cut people's time, but if we have more people than are able to speak, we could consider a 2-minute I don't know. It's.
And that is already incorporated, and I know that we have used that on occasion when there have been more people than 3 minutes each would allow for to speak, and that is still, I left that language alone.
It says maximum of 3.
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe it says a maximum or up to a maximum of 3 minutes, right? But that, kind of permits that, yeah.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I've been involved in a number of boards that did not have timetables on public comment periods. And unfortunately, those board meetings ended up getting dragged out dramatically because the goal of the speakers was to disrupt the board meeting to the point to where business couldn't get accomplished. We ultimately ended up losing quorums and stuff. So the implementation of the time period is so that the chair can manage and make sure that the board is able to get its business done. Keep in mind that public testimony at the board meeting is not the only mechanism the public has and available to it to communicate with the board. We, got emails, we've got, telephone calls, we've got a variety of other mechanisms that are available. So the public testimony at the board meeting itself is that personalization of the message, but also a way to get to a broader audience, not just the board, but the community at large that's watching the meeting. So I'd be a strong advocate for maintaining a time period and giving the chair the opportunity to make sure that the board can get its business done in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons, just a second. I'm going to go to Mr. Simmons. He's been waiting patiently.
Well, the board gets preference here. Just 2 things. I thought I heard earlier, possibly an observation that the public hearing testimony might be limited to a time frame. And from everything I've seen, and Mr. Anderson can confirm, there's nothing that limits any 15-minute time frame in public hearings. It's just based on people signed up to testify in up to 3 minutes each. And then the other piece that's really relevant to what you're talking about today is in the code right now. It does state that it's a 15-minute for open public forum. It's 15 minutes, but the chair has the option to extend. So that language already exists in the code.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
could you, I apologize. Did you send the code out with this?
I did not specifically send out code because I knew the initial intent was to review the rules of conduct and if possible, leave the code as it stood. So I did not delve into revising or reviewing additional code language at this point, though I certainly can do that.
I guess it'd be good just to make sure that we're clear. I just want to be clear. Obviously, I have to run the meeting, so
yes,
I can be clear on both as trying to move forward at this point in time. So, Commissioner Waldron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one last, I'll send you a suggestion for maybe maybe finding a way to take there's just bullets here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6th and 7th bullet, maybe there's a way we can put those together about disruptive behavior and statements or personal comments or verbal insults about individuals. Maybe there's a way we can move that into that statement. So I'll send you some suggestions.
Yeah.
See if it meets your muster.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And
I see what we're trying to get at. We don't want to have people personally insulted or personally but we want to make sure it is, a forum where people can share their concerns.
Absolutely.
Or their kudos. Bring on the
course.
kudos.
And I guess to that end, where would the board like to go from here? Certainly we can keep revising these and working on these.
I don't think we're ready at this point.
No.
So I would say probably, I don't know, with everything coming up, if in a week or two would be the next time to bring it up.
Sure.
Because I think we want to just make sure we're all comfortable with it before we put it on the consent agenda.
Absolutely. And to Commissioner Waldorf's point, if anybody has other suggestions, if you would like to individually send those to me, I can then kind of compile those and try to put those into a single version, and then, yeah, we'll bring it back in a few weeks.
Yeah, and you said that you reached out to some of the other counties.
Well, I just reviewed what other counties have on record
Okay.
for rules and guidelines as far as their public meetings.
Okay. I may, yeah, I'm just thinking I may reach out to a couple of counties and see, or I could give a list to the clerk, because I think the clerks of the board all have the rules of engagement for the meetings. So maybe I'll do that. Gina, I'll give you a list of some counties to ask.
Sure. And I'm happy to forward if you want specific ones. I do have a number of them compiled, and I can.
We could probably just talk and
Yeah.
see. Commissioner French.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. And I would also offer up names of a couple of counties that have had very contentious issues to deal with and have managed to navigate their way through that and stuff. So I'd share that with the chair as well.
Yeah, if you would send the county names to Chris, that would be great. And then Chris and I will go through the ones that I'm thinking of too. So that'd be great. Thank you, Commissioner French. Okay, so this will come back to us in another couple of weeks. Commissioner Jordan.
Just real quick question, in your research on the allocation of speaking time,
Yes.
did you find any other jurisdictions that have similar practices? And I was also curious about the Valley specifically, because we've kind of heard about city council, was wondering about the Valley City Council.
And I did not specifically look up Spokane Valleys, though I can look into that and see where theirs are. Certainly there are kind of a number of different I guess approaches to writing these and the ways in which cities and counties go about it. I did not see, and I think I pulled in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 different sets of rules. I did not see any that allowed allocation of time. I did see a couple that specifically prohibited it, though.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the end of our agenda items. Is there anything that's miscellaneous that anyone needs to talk about that hasn't been talked about yet? No. Seeing no one's, everyone's shaking their head no. So, okay, so then that will take us to our executive sessions, and we have 3.
That's correct.
Explain each one of them.
Okay, so I have, I believe, one this afternoon under pending potential litigation pursuant to RCW 423110 or 423110-1I. This matter will involve the board, myself, CEO Scott Simmons, Kyle Tuig, and Matt Koza from my office. Matt, how much time are you anticipating?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, and no board action needed on that one.
And I've got one under labor negotiations under RCW 4230-144. In addition to the board, Chris Anderson, myself will be Ashley Cameron and Josh Grote. That'll be 15 minutes. No action taken. And then the third will be under real estate. Sale or acquisition or lease of real estate, RCW 4230-110-1B. In addition to the board, Chris Anderson and myself will be Mike Kittlestat, Kevin Ritchie, and that's it. And that'll be 15 minutes with no action.
Okay, so that one is just, it's the board, yourself, Chris Anderson, Kevin Ritchie, and Mike Kittlestat. Okay. Okay.
Commissioner, I'm sorry. Could I add Randy Bischoff to the last one as well?
and Randy. Okay, and how long did you say?
15 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so we have 3 executive sessions, a total of 40 minutes. No actions will be taken. So at the end of the 40 minutes, we will either extend, but we'll let the clerk know because we will be adjourning for the day at that point in time. So it is now 3:51. And again, we'll be in executive session for 40 minutes and we'll be adjourning at the end of that executive session. So thank you all very much for today. Happy Halloween, safe trick or treating. And we will start off with the board, Scott, Chris Anderson, Matt Koza, and Kyle Tuig.